It's always fun coming here to Wisconsin. They treat me like a king, and it's been so fun. I played pickleball for the very first time in my life, and what a fun game that is. You don't have to jump, you don't have to be strong, but it's a lot of fun. And then I was also at, let's see, I'll let you guess where this was. Does that look familiar to anybody? Yeah, I was at your college today, and I called them up last week, and I asked them if I could get a table to talk to the students, and they asked, well, what do you want to talk to them about? And I said, a theory that explains Grand Canyon. And that's what I did, and there was 6 students that wanted to see it presented at the college, and so hopefully we'll be able to present that there. And so it was a very pleasant experience, and as creationists, we have the high ground. There's a lot of stuff. It was so much fun last night at the Thanksgiving thing where we heard about drug pushers that were now sharing the gospel and how God's working here. What a blessing that is. And I think the battering ram for the lies of Satan is this hydroplate theory. We had the very first hydroplate conference online in September, and there was 3 PhDs that spoke. And one of them was a professor of aeronautics at the U.S. Air Force Academy. And so we've never had somebody like that promoting the hydroplate. And so there's a lot of highly qualified people promoting it. And if you can only see one talk, I suggest you look at the Comet talk, because that's where we've actually made accurate predictions. Kevin Lee he's corresponding with Dr. Brownlee, who was in charge of getting the stuff back from the comets. It was the Stardust mission. And he told them, paraphrasing, he told Dr. Brownlee, you're going to find stuff from the Earth in the comet. And Dr. Brownlee says, no, we're going to find stuff from the Oort cloud. And he was shocked and dismayed to find stuff from the Oort cloud. And then 6 years ago, he emailed them. Before the DART mission, they wanted to redirect an asteroid. And 6 years ago, he emailed them and reminded them about the accurate prediction of the comet. And then he said that any plan to deflect the comet or the asteroid would be based on the assumption about the composition of the asteroid. The physics behind the chosen plan may work for one composition, like a solid rock, but will fail if the asteroid is just a bunch of loosely held rocks. And guess what? This summer, I think it was in August 9th, NASA accidentally causes Dimorphos boulder swarm, as deadly as Hiroshima during DART mission. So what we got now is 37 boulders coming at us because they ignored the warnings of the hydroplate. And it goes on to say that the large rocks have the same speed and targeted asteroid, so they are just as dangerous. And it also said that it had unforeseen implications. Well, no, Kevin Lee told them this could happen, but they ignored them, or at least Dr. Brownlee did. And what do we have here? We got 37 boulders coming at us. Some of them are 25 feet wide. And if it's 15 feet wide, it could hit with Hiroshima-sized impacts of the atomic bomb. And so they've got a bad perspective of the past. And clearly, we've got an accurate perspective of the past because we're making accurate predictions. And so we were promoting this at St. Cloud State, and we had this poster hanging up. And we were an online conference, come and see it. And this is, just look at this. Is this offensive? Answers to scientific problems. Origin of Grand Canyon, nerves in dinosaur bones, fusing past iron, plateau formation, Cubanite and comets. All these things that scientists really can't answer. But this theory will answer it. So what happened at St. Cloud State? Somebody stole our poster. So we put it up again, and they stole it again. And they know who did it, but they won't tell us if it was a student, faculty, or staff. And I don't think it was a student, because a student doesn't understand what's going on here. Because if one theory answers all these questions, you can throw the Big Bang on the scrap heap of history where it belongs. And so they stole our posters, and I don't like being censored. That's one thing I hate, censorship. And so we did the same talk at our local creation group. And we invited Grace Campus Fellowship, our student organization. And then our church printed 50 of these flyers. And it says, see what a poster thief wants to censor at SCSU, hydroplate.org. And we had plastered them all over campus during homecoming week. And then I cut the dates off so we could keep them up. It didn't go outdated, and they started to steal them. And so now we're doing it again. We're going to do it right on campus this time. And then this time it says, it's shocking. Someone doesn't want you to get these answers. This thief steals posters and flyers. Educate yourself at hydroplate.org and rsr www.iowa.org/HPT. And then at the very bottom it says, invite your professors. So I'm laying down the gauntlet. Let's take a look at it. And I've been in the science departments 3 times now this fall. First I invited them to listen to the conference, and then I went back there and I said, hey, these talks are online, feel free to check them out. And if there's something wrong with the theory, let me know, because I don't want to promote a theory that's bad. And then I was in there just the other day too. And so I think we've got the proper perspective. And here's a clip, and I'm here to make Christmas shopping easy for you. There's a table with some perfect Christmas gifts. And as you watch this, just think of people that you'd like to show this to.
Anywhere you go, you see these strata lines of rock all around the world, especially like where a road might cut through a mountain or maybe along a mountain. This one is in Utah, and this one is in Pennsylvania. Look at this one in Vermont. These layers are bent 90 degrees. Now wait a minute, you cannot bend rock, it'll simply break. And look at this one. Here's another really interesting feature, also in Pennsylvania. Look at all those severely bent layers. Look at a portion of the Rocky Mountains of Western Canada. Notice that these mountains are not only bent, but they're severely kinked. Look at these interesting layers of rock in Glacier National Park. Each of these layers is roughly as tall as a human, and look what they're doing. These layers are not just bent or kinked, these layers literally bend back over on top of themselves, like an S pattern. How could that have happened over vast amounts of time? The simple and obvious answer is that they can't.
And I've seen a lot of evolution, or a lot of creation videos, and that's the best footage that I've seen of bent rock layers. You just can't explain that over millions of years. And so I called him up, and if you go into this is Mike Snavely talking, and it's titled The Horror of the Flood. And I didn't want that video when I saw it out there. It's like, I don't want to know what the horrors of the flood are. But they showed this video at the Hydroplate conference. And I was like, man, this is the best flood video I've ever seen. It answers, where the water came from, where it went, and then it even has Walt Brown's hydroplate theory clip in there too. And then it got to the gospel. And it's just a great way to share the gospel. And I think, and I emailed him, and I had some questions about the gospel, and he satisfied my questions because we cut it right at the gospel. I don't know why. And I said, great, I'd like 50 of them. And he says, well, hold on. When I get home, I'll give you 50% off. And I said, good, I'll take 100. I want everybody to get this video. And I think when you see it, you're going to understand why, because it ends with the gospel. It's a great witnessing tool. It destroys millions of years. He does it really, really well. And so I just want this information to get out there, and everybody I know, pastors, brothers, sisters, friends, they're all getting one. And I'm encouraging all of them to, hey, look at this for a Christmas, get some for yourself to hand out. And it's the best Christmas present ever. This is what you get to the person who's got everything. This is a great witnessing tool. And 100-some years ago, Dr. Thomas Chamberlain, he was the first former president of the University of Wisconsin and the first head of the geology department at the University of Chicago. He had a real famous paper that warned researchers that they shouldn't let one hypothesis dominate their thinking. He said there should always be multiple working hypotheses, because then the students can compare and contrast, they can think critically, they can sharpen their analytical skills. And he says, but if we only have one theory, well then they just memorize and conform. And that's what I think the problem is with science these days. And I explained that. I told that to a geology professor at St. Cloud State. And she said, well, that's not how science is done now. And I wish I would have asked her, well, how is science done now? But I think Neil deGrasse Tyson explains how it is.
This is world-renowned astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson, a scientist, explaining why you and everybody out there shouldn't ask questions. Watch.
There's a list of top-ranking medical professionals. Just take a look.
I'm talking about, excuse me, medical
Dr. Peter
professionals
McCullough. No, I want to go through what happened
consensus.
here. This is the problem with the
you
consensus.
need the consensus.
Okay,
medical professional.
I want you to
because the medical is so huge. I can find you an astrophysicist who is sure we've been visited by aliens. That's not the
problem
consensus.
was the scientific method died here, and this is the point I want to make. It died a death here, and I need you to help me save it because Dr. Peter McCullough is the leading cardiologist.
I don't care if titles don't matter here.
But what should matter?
They don't matter.
What
matters
should matter?
Is the consensus.
What should?
I'm not interested in medical pedigree. I'm interested in medical consensus, in scientific consensus.
Scientists that were on the ground, that were dealing with patients, were being censored, were being shut down. Their YouTube channels were being shut down. Their LinkedIn's were being shut down.
Because the individual scientist does not matter.
So let me get this straight. The scientist doesn't want you to follow the scientific method because it goes against the scientific consensus, even if the consensus was wrong. And it's not just the vaccines. The consensus did the same thing with COVID. Remember when Fauci and company said COVID came from a wet market? That lab leak theory went against the fake consensus. If you mentioned it, you got censored and smeared as a crazy person. Hey, kook, the coronavirus came from a bat. Definitely not the coronavirus lab around the corner.
That's right. And the consensus is wrong. NASA proved that. Their perspective of the past based on blind chance and random collisions of atoms is wrong. And the hydroplate theory making accurate predictions is right. And so we're kind of in the dark ages right now. They're forcing us to think a certain way. And I've even had a Stein at St. Cloud State. Will SCSU lead us out of the dark ages of blind chance and random collisions of atoms? And so we need the freedom to think. And if we can only think a certain way, that's really limiting us. And it reminds me of Ignaz Semmelweis. Anybody ever heard of Ignaz Semmelweis, the Semmelweis reflex? This is when a long-held ideas can remain entrenched despite potent evidence to the contrary. And people can and do persecute those who challenge the consensus, even when the consensus is wrong. And that's where we're living today. The consensus is wrong, and people who point it out get persecuted. And what did Ignaz Semmelweis do? He figured out that you're supposed to wash your hands after you do an autopsy before you deliver babies. Wash your hands with chlorine and scrub your fingernails, because there was one part of the hospital that had a high death rate and one part that had a low death rate. You thought, what's the difference? Well, the high death rate was delivered when they delivered babies. They would do autopsies before they delivered the babies, and the other wing was just delivered by midwives. They didn't do autopsies. And so he said, wash your hands. And it just seems like basic stuff. Did he win a Nobel Prize or anything? But no, they ridiculed him. They rejected it and ridiculed him. And it was the older people who wanted consensus. They wouldn't go along with this. And his hospital his death rate was less than 1%. And another hospital had a death rate from 10 to 15% of people that went in to have babies would die. But what did they say? It was time to stop the nonsense about chlorine hand wash. And we just look at it as just basic, but that's what happens. When you get an entrenched way of thinking, it's almost like science advances one funeral at a time. And I'm seeing that in my lifetime. Okay, and so going back to that hydroplate theory, I think we need to start asking questions. All right, and this was an email that I got from somebody. It says, I've been praying for a friend for a long time, and she was hoping Christian clients would go in there and talk to him. And he says that was an answer to prayer, and that my conversation opened up his mind. And I believe he's been watching your videos, because I've got cards out there, I got a YouTube channel, and I got a lot of videos. Dinosaurs, Who's Your Daddy, Evolution versus Science. And I asked her, well, which video did he send you? And she said it was this one. I had 20 minutes to speak in front of the Rotary Club, and I gave him the hydroplate. If you can imagine that, the hydroplate in 20 minutes. And the sound, this was during COVID, so the doors are open, a lot of background noise. I tried to get rid of it, and the audio was just horrible. And yet that was the one that he sent her. See, this hydroplate, I think it is the battering ram that's going to destroy the lies of evolution. Because you ever wonder why the world is such a mess? You know, it's because there's a battle between God's truth and Satan's lies. And ground zero for that is evolution versus creation. And so we have to get our kids equipped on how to answer this onslaught of evolution that they're going to see. But I've got a ministry called Solidify Your Faith. And you can go in there, and my brother asked me, well, what does Weebly mean? And I said, oh, it means I'm cheap. It means that I get it for free. And the less money I spend on the website, the more money I have to do what God wants me to do. And I've got creation talks there. I've got kid talks there. And I've even got some freedom talks there that get censored on YouTube. But I was invited out to get you up to speed on what's been happening this year. I was invited out to Pennsylvania to do a creation apologetics seminar. And this church contacted me in Wisconsin and said, hey, could you do a creation science revival? I'll give you 3 times Sunday plus Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And I said, I'd love to, but I'll be in Pennsylvania that time. I can do it the weekend before. And he says, great, do it. And I said, well, how about instead of a creation revival, how about we do a creation Sunday? And then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we'll do a revival of truth, of the sense of the information that's been censored these last few years. And so we did Behind the Vaccine Curtain on Monday, and the COVID corruption on Tuesday, and then what globalists, that powerful evolutionists want to do with humanity, and that's tyranny. They want to control us with climate credits, digital currency, social credit. There's a lot of tools, and we have to be aware of the World Health Organization. They want a pandemic treaty by May. And I spoke out in Colorado at the Rocky Mountain Creation Fellowship, and Real Science Radio, they interviewed me, and they put it up, and they wanted to talk to me about, should I vaccinate my baby? And so they interviewed me, and then they posted it on YouTube, and YouTube censored it. And they emailed me and said, YouTube censored the video. And I said, well, welcome to the party. More people will probably see it now that it's censored than if it wasn't. And that's exactly what happened. Well, it's like, well, how can you see it if they censored it? Well, you go into Rumble. Go into Rumble, Real Science Radio. There's 2 videos up there, mine and somebody else. And so then you can see the information. Again, I hate censorship. My perspective is you need all the information to make an informed decision. And we haven't been getting it. And that's a whole nother talk. But Real Science Radio is really, it's my favorite site. That's what I listen to when I'm driving to Pennsylvania or to Colorado. I'm just listening to these Real Science Radio shows. They come out every Friday. And it's this one here is Bob Enyart. He's just so bold. He's one of my heroes because he, I look at Bob, he goes way out on the limb. And it's like, well, if he can go that far, I can go this far. And so then I can go into colleges and stuff. Well, Bob, can you do even more? But he got one of his questions asked at a real prestigious science gathering over in Europe. And listen to this. This is the question he asks, because they always get so excited about a planet. If there's water on the planet, oh, life may have began there. But actually, water destroys the molecules before they can get put together. And he points that out. And so maybe just listen to this.
This is for Dr. Wojtek, for Mary. It is from Bob, an independent science reporter. And the question is, rather than an asset, isn't water the enemy of prebiotic molecules? It's the universal solvent, and outside of a living organism, water dissolves life's building blocks like amino acids, sugars like RNA and DNA, various kinds of carbohydrates and other polymers. Shouldn't this chemical challenge be more openly acknowledged in astrobiology? I guess this assumes it's not acknowledged, but what do you say?
I think it's acknowledged. I'm not exactly, I think that's one of the biggest challenges we have is understanding the evolution from simple compounds that can be made abiotically towards more organized and more highly functional biomolecules that are important for life. So I guess I don't understand.
And so water is a challenge, how these molecules survive.
Because of water? Sorry, yes. I guess I didn't get it.
Well, I think the question is, it posits that water is a challenge for prebiotic evolution, that because it attacks the various molecules involved.
So in some of the prebiotic, thanks, this is something that people think about. Hydration and dehydration reactions are really important in prebiotic chemistry. And so postulating that life could evolve when there is no opportunity for an environmental separation to allow dehydration reactions actually is a problem, and people do address that. And whether it's, you need a continent, which some people, life couldn't evolve until we had land so we could get away from the water, or there's other ways to separate it. There can be phase separation with ice and water. There can be a variety of other ways that you can get dehydration reactions. And so I think that is very important and recognized. So Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
You know, first she answered something that wasn't asked. And he brought, to his credit, he brought her back to the topic. Doesn't water destroy life, the molecules, before they can get formed to life? And then she finally had to admit it, that it is a problem. And Bob Enyart says, I've never seen that in the literature. You know, you can't have life, you can't have life without water, and yet life can't begin in water. It's a really hard conundrum, and we need to just, and he asks the questions that make them admit it. And that's what I've found, is asking questions are a good way to help people to think. Because if they don't answer the question properly, it doesn't go away. And hopefully it wakes them up at night. But I go around campuses and I'll ask questions. I did this pretty much this year. I was at a private college at Northwestern, and I asked, how did we get here? Creation, evolution, or intelligent design? And it was, 44-2 then Northwestern. And at St. Cloud State, it was 39-43. I was surprised. I thought evolution would run away with it, but it was really close. And this is at Bethel. It was, 39-3, and 10 people didn't know. And 39-15, I should say. This is at a St. Cloud Vocational School, same question, and it's 44-21. Creation's winning. A lot of these. At these places, and I went to Altoona, Penn State Altoona campus, and it was 13-17. A lot closer than I would have guessed. I went to the University of Chicago, Illinois, did the same thing without a sign. I just went up to students and asked them. And it's really good about, when they say evolution, it's like, well, how did life begin? They can't answer that. Where did matter come from? They can't answer that. And so I hope them, hopefully, realize they have faith, just like I do. But I don't have as much faith as they have. And this was 18-10. And just think of all the billions of dollars that have been invested over all these decades, and still people are not buying it. And so that's a blessing. They had this event at St. Cloud, Celebrate Minnesota, a lot of Christian rock or songs and whatever. So a lot of Christians were there. So I changed my question. When did dinosaurs live? Millions of years ago or thousands of years ago? And it was 81-51, millions of years one, which tells me that the church is not doing a very good job of giving a biblical interpretation of dinosaurs. As the Bible tells us, they were made on day 6 with the other land animals. They got 2 of every kind of dinosaur got on the ark. Not the big ones, but the young ones got on so they could get in the door. And then all the other ones outside the ark, they got turned into fossils. They were buried in mud. A lot of them became, that's how we get the fossils and the layers of rock. That was from the flood. And then they got off the ark, and there was no word for dinosaur. People called them dragons until 1841. And there's carvings of them in castles and canyons and temples that are anatomically correct. And then they died off. And, who knows? Maybe there could be some alive in a swamp in Africa. Who knows? Or in the ocean. So that's just basically the Bible. And it was thousands of years, not millions of years. Okay, and so there's 2 different perspectives. Which one's right? Well, let's take a look at some of God's clues to see which one's right, okay? God's left us some clues. So now you put on your detective hat. Okay, this is the crime scene. We're out in Colorado camping. We put all our food in the trunk, and they were sleeping in the tent. We wake up the next morning, and guess what? There's paw marks all over our trunk. There's bite marks on our bumper. There's bite marks on the soap that we didn't put in there. And it's like, well, do you think the insects did that? Do you think some chance random processes did that over millions of years? No, something made that, And so we got the book, and there must have been a bear. And then a year ago, there was scratch marks on our tree, and there was scratch marks on our cushion, and there was puncture marks on our cushion. And it's like, well, how did that happen? But if you're a detective, if you had a picture of the crime, or if you had a video of the crime, does that help? Well, that's what we had. There's the bear, and there's he's having a great old time. And so now, we know what it did. Well, I submit to you that the Bible is the videotape of the universe. And so let's go back, because when it talks about biology, geology, anthropology, astronomy, biology is everything produces after their kind. That's what we see in the world out there. Everything produces after their kind. Dogs produce dogs, cats produce cats, they don't produce camels. Okay, and then it also says the seed is in itself. That's a biological statement. It talks about geology, a worldwide flood. That's how we get those layers of rock. All over the world, that's how we get all these fossils. And think about that dead deer on the side of the road. You guys get your dead deers up here on the side of the road? Is that going to turn into a fossil? No, it's going to get scavenged, it's going to decompose. The only way it gets buried, it turns into a fossil is if it's buried rapidly. Therefore, any layer of rock that has fossils in it was laid down rapidly. And that's their whole geologic column. Okay, and it talks about astronomy. He made the stars also. That's a phrase in a verse. It's not even the whole verse. He made the stars also. And that's what we see. They were created. And every time they put up a brand new telescope out there looking farther back into the past, they believe, they're always shocked at what they find. They expect to find young universes, and they find mature universes. And so they have a bad perspective of the past. And then it talks about anthropology. How do we get these people groups? You know, they send me the census every 10 years, and they ask what race I am. I put other, and I put human. Where there's only one race, but they're really good at dividing us. You know, they want to keep us. It reminds me of that meme. It was the king in his castle, and these people are storming the gates with pitchforks and torches. And the guy says, "Don't worry, king. We'll just tell the pitchfork people that the torch people want their pitchforks." And so then they get them to fight amongst each other, and that's what they're real good at. What we need to do is focus on Jesus, unite around Jesus, and resist the globalists. That's what I think the key to victory is. Okay, but back to, anthropology. That's Genesis 11. That's the Tower of Babel. That's when they got scattered all over the world, and you get the different people groups. And the video by Mike Snavely does a really good job about explaining that. Excellent, excellent. Highly recommended. Okay, but back to the dinosaurs. What clues do we have that God left us that lets us figure out, did they live millions of years ago or thousands of years ago? Well, one of the clues is worldwide layers of sediment. Okay, that's a huge clue. Anybody ever been to Grand Canyon? Those layers just don't end there. Those go all over the continent. And not only that, Tim Clary's doing more research, and he says not only do they go all over the continent, they go all over the world. How are you going to lay down worldwide layers of sediment with local floods? No, there was a worldwide flood, and they find dinosaur footprints on every continent. How does that happen? How long do your footprints last out there? You know, if Randy Galuza was in college, he'd be saying, Professor, what process today is turning footprints into stone? And it happened all over the world. I'm saying that's a strong argument for the worldwide flood. And some of these footprints are down in Glen Rose, Texas. And I went there, and and I took that picture. Those are dinosaur footprints in the bedrock. See, 100-some years ago, a flood went through and ripped off a layer of rock from the Paluxy River, and it revealed dinosaur footprints. But not only dinosaur footprints, human footprints. And listen to one who found them.
Archaeologist Carl Baugh has led the investigation of these controversial prints for over 12 years.
My reaction was one of shock. I had heard of human footprints being found in this locale on the Paluxy near Glen Rose, Texas, but I was rather skeptical. And here, after removing actual rock layers, the team and I excavated a series of dinosaur footprints. And 18 1/2 inches from one of those dinosaur footprints, we excavated a 16-inch human footprint. We excavated 12 footprints in a series. And when you find a trail with left, right pace and stride, the right distance apart, then you have to interpret this as belonging to humankind.
It's been claimed that the Paluxy River footprints are a hoax carved into the limestone bedrock as a tourist attraction.
Well, we found trails leading under limestone ledges and actually removed the limestone ledges one slab of rock at a time. And we found that both the dinosaur footprints and the trail of human footprints continued under the rock ledges. This evidence is real.
Okay, now this is very controversial. And again, I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'm just letting you know this information is out there. And I encourage people to listen to both sides. Listen to Carl Baugh and Don Patton. They were the ones who found dinosaur footprints with human footprints. And listen to other people that say they're not legit. And then come to your own conclusion. And I had the opportunity at the Grace Conference this year to talk with Carl Baugh.
In 1981, in the spring, I made a trip to Glen Rose, Texas. And there made a discovery that changed my entire life. I was completing the master's in archaeology and was assigned by my mentor to direct an original excavation. And in the process of doing that, after removing the limestone layer, discovered a trail of dinosaur footprints, 19 altogether, 19 successive dinosaur footprints. Removed more limestone, and 18 inches from one of those dinosaur footprints, I discovered a 16-inch human footprint. Genuine in every detail. The great toe, which is unique to man, second, third, fourth little toe, metatarsal arch, the ball section of the foot, the medial section, which includes the interior ball section of the foot, and the lateral with a bulge. All of that is unique to mankind. And continued to excavate and discovered 3 more. So a series of left-right human footprints among dinosaur footprints. I called the press. They flew down by helicopter. The next morning, I got on the plane at DFW to go back to St. Louis, and headlines in the newspaper stated, "Tracks Step on Evolution."
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then the battle began.
Oh, yeah. The battle began. Yeah. And I asked him, well, what was it like when you found it? And this is what he said.
At that point, now I had graduated from theistic evolution to an old age creation position. I put a gap between Genesis 1:1 and 1:2. There is no gap between Genesis 1:1 and 1:2. So I was a progressive old age creationist. But it really is in the same camp, unfortunately. So this destroyed my paradigm completely. I didn't sleep for 4 days and nights. And then I went back to St. Louis, and the press started calling and took the news, the controversy worldwide. And I'd like to say that every honest person has identified with it. They too have to go through a catharsis, a complete change of mindset in order to accept this. And even some very good creationists are hesitant to accept this because the evolutionists have targeted everything we do and, of course, propagandized every false idea they can. But that's fine. We would expect that because this destroys their religion.
It does. It does.
But it supports the true religion and the true God, and the Bible as being the Word of God.
Amen. And he's such a quality guy. He speaks at the Grace Conference every year. It's just north of Chicago, if you can make it. graceconference.com, I believe. And just incredible what he's found. And a 16-inch foot would look something like that. And the Bible does say there were giants in the earth in those days. And so just get all the information, come to your own conclusion, because there are creation organizations that say don't talk about it. And I think that's, I'm not saying, I hate that, don't talk about it. It's like, get all the information and think for yourself. That's my perspective. And Dr. Mary Schweitzer, she found dinosaur blood and dinosaur bones. And it says, Schweitzer's dangerous discovery. Blood cells in the bone, what's dangerous about that? It's only dangerous if you get your power, prestige, and your funding, if evolution's true, millions of years. And people do not want that. And this is some quotes from that article. Do you realize you get red blood cells in that bone? And I just got goosebumps because everyone knows these things don't last 65 million years. Everyone knows that. She had to do the test 17 times before she'd believe her eyes. And then when she told her boss, Jack Horner, she said, I showed Horner the slide, and she recalls Jack said, prove to me they're not red blood cells. So he's not real fired up about finding something that can't be millions of years and something that's supposed to be millions of years. And then Bob Enyart, he called him up, and he asked him, I said, I'll give you $20,000 if you carbon date that bone. And Jack wouldn't do it, but that's a whole other talk. And then they found bone cells. This is Mark Armitage. He had it published in a secular journal, Acta Histochemica. And what happened to him? Did he get a raise? What do you think? Bingo, got fired. See, there's a witch hunt for creationists. And they can't beat them in the classrooms. They're trying to discredit Karl Baugh. They're trying to keep it out of the, fight in the courtroom. And Jerry Bergman, it's happened to him twice. And then people started sending him their experiences, and he's got 3 volumes of people that have been censored because they questioned evolution, they taught real science, and Expelled is a good video, documentary on that. So what did Mark Armitage do? He sued the college. It's like, you can't fire me. And he won. And he won, but he's not teaching there anymore, so who really won? So now he's finding dinosaur nerves in dinosaur bones. This is a huge clue from God. Those nerves can't last millions of years. And you can't really see it here, but if you hit this with UV light, there's the nerve. And then when you zoom in on that, it just becomes more and more beautiful. When you zoom in on what God makes, it's more and more intricate and beautiful. When you zoom in like on what man makes, you see a lot more imperfections. And they found carbon-14 in dinosaur bones and fossils and diamonds. And this is one of God's clues. If you go into ICR on YouTube, go into That's a Fact. And I love this one. This, I think, is God's fingerprint, the Fibonacci sequence.
In the Fibonacci sequence, the first 2 numbers are 0 and 1, and each following number is the sum of the previous 2 numbers. As the sequence climbs, the ratio of 2 of its higher values nears the golden ratio, or phi. These special numbers often occur in nature, like in the spirals on a sunflower. The same patterns show up in the circular layers of a pine cone or pineapple, and in clusters of conifer needles. So, what does all this mean? Well, evolution can't explain the development of mathematical laws, but the Bible can. Scripture solves this mystery by pointing us to the truth of the intelligent Creator. God created all things, both visible and invisible, like math.
And he even put it in your hand. Look at your hand once, okay? Now watch this.
Perhaps no tool in the world is as versatile and useful as the human hand. Its details constantly display real design. For example, finger bone lengths follow the proportions of the Fibonacci number sequence. The sum of the smallest 2 segments of a finger equals the length of the third, and the sum of the second and third equals the length of the 4th bone. Your hand is a mobile golden spiral, perfectly balancing strength and dexterity.
And that's not the only place. You see that same curve in the smallest DNA? That same curve, you see it in shells and horns and spider webs. You see it in a hurricane. You see it in the farthest galaxies. I think this is God's fingerprint. I mean, what are the chances of that happening in a chance random process? And then this is called fractals. Again, this is mathematics, and it applies to the real world too.
The Mandelbrot set of numbers reveals a secret code that went undiscovered for thousands of years. While mathematicians can plot this set by hand, today's computers show with great precision that beauty is built into numbers. And when you take a closer look at the Mandelbrot set, you see the pattern goes on without end. This is an example of a fractal, a type of structure that repeats infinitely on smaller and smaller scales. Snowflakes have a fractal quality. Why is this? The laws of nature responsible for snowflake formation are mathematical because they stem from the mind of God. Fractals occur both in math, which is abstract, not made of atoms, and the physical world, which is made of atoms, because they have the same designer. Lightning branches occur in a fractal pattern, and so does broccoli. If the universe was formed by chance, why would nature follow mathematical rules?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and Jason Lyle does a really good job on this. The thing on the left, that's a mathematical formula. The thing on the right is a fern. Same thing with the galaxy. One doesn't exist, but it's a mathematical formula, and the other one does exist. And the same thing with broccoli. And you look at our DNA. There's a DNA replacement or a DNA repair system in there, and it says that says about 1 million DNA letters are damaged in a cell on a good day. So there's a DNA repair system. So my question is, what came first, the DNA or the DNA repair system? And just to think, just so you can understand what's happening inside our cell, and just think, is this chance random processes or is this incredible design?
Everything is ready to roll. 3, 2, 1, go. The blue molecule racing along the DNA is reading the gene. It's unzipping the double helix and copying one of the 2 strands. The yellow chain snaking out of the top is a copy of the genetic message, and it's made of a close chemical cousin of DNA called RNA. The building blocks to make the RNA enter through an intake hole. They are matched to the DNA, letter by letter, to copy the A's, C's, T's, and G's of the gene. You are watching this process called transcription in real time. It's happening right now in almost every cell in your body.
Yeah, that's supposed to happen by chance. And it's happening all over your body. You don't even know about it. And we aren't even talking about kinesins or ATP synthesis, the energy source for all this. The origin of chirality. That's because our protons are either proteins are either left-handed or right-handed. Like our hands are not identical. They're mirror images. Okay, and the thing about life is all the proteins are left-handed. And that's what caused this guy. He's got a brilliant guy. He's got a lot of patents, PhD in chemistry and organic chemistry. And he says, evolution, he writes this article, evolution hopes you don't know chemistry. So this is a huge clue by God. Okay, and he says, how can at random chance natural processes create proteins with thousands of left-handed molecules? If it's all left-handed when it's alive. When it dies, it goes back to a 50-50 mix. And then it says also create DNA with billions of right-handed molecules. He said the reality of chirality, more than any other evidence, did more to convince me the reality of an all-powerful creator. These are some powerful clues that evolutionists cannot answer. And even like your belly button. At one point in your life, you were living in fluid. And you had to get everything from the placenta. That's where all the nutrients were coming from and the oxygen, and you didn't need your lungs in there. But then when you're born, there's 4 valves that have to slam shut for you to switch from the placenta to your lungs and to your heart. And it's just amazing. You can listen to Dr. Caselli talk about that on our Twin Cities Creation Science YouTube channel. It's called You've Come a Long Way, Baby. Just your belly button. And then blood clotting. David Reeves has a really good thing on this. He says there's 100 steps that have to happen for your blood to clot. And it has to be in that perfect order. And it has to get all the way done. I mean, if it did it too soon, it would clot in your inside. And if it didn't do it at all, you're going to bleed to death eventually. And so it's very sophisticated. And how is that going to happen? Chance, random processes. No, and there's a question. I actually asked this at a museum the Mastodon Museum down in St. Louis. I asked the person who was working there, I said, what came first, the heart or blood cells? And they said blood cells. And I said, what good is that without a heart? And they said, a heart. And I said, what's good with that without blood cells? And I even said, I'll give it to you. In all the billions of years that supposedly went by, and all the places in the universe, you get the first heart with the first blood cells. What good are they without lungs? Or a digestive system, or a nervous system, or a skeletal system? It all has to be there, fully formed, fully functional, right from the get-go, or we're dead. That's a strong clue that God's given us. And Fred Williams' son, he went to Boulder, Colorado, the university, and he'd ask, when he was talking to an atheist, and he'd say, talking to an evolutionist, he said, how did vital organs evolve? I mean, we can't live without them. How did we live before we developed them? And they can never answer that. It's kind of like the mousetrap. You take one of those pieces out, it's not going to work. They call it irreducible complexity. I think Bob Enyart calls it sublime sophistication. Complex, you can have a long computer program that does something. That's complex. But if it's a short one that does a lot of things, that's sophisticated. And so that's what he thinks God is, sophisticated. And I love this. Whenever I see a monarch, I just stop and watch it. It is the evolutionist's worst nightmare. Because how are they going to explain this monarch that starts in an egg and then turns into a walking mouth? It's just a walking stomach. All it does is eat. The caterpillar can't reproduce. All it does is eat. And then it goes into a chrysalis, and then it comes out a butterfly. How do you do that? By chance random processes. It had to get all the way through that chrysalis. And it dissolves itself in the chrysalis. It goes from that caterpillar, can't reproduce, it had to get all the way through that chrysalis or it's dead. It can't get halfway through. It can't even get 99% through. It's got to get all the way through. And it's got to break out of that chrysalis using its wings. If you cut it, it's not going to be able to fly. It needs that struggle to do what God designed it to do. And also bees. You ever heard of buzz pollination?
Orpheum flowers don't contain nectar. The payment they provide is pollen. But strangely, they keep it locked up. Special twisted stamens stop it being stolen by visiting insects. All, that is, except one. The female carpenter bee. Only she has the key. Let me show you what the bee has to do using these tuning forks here. When the bee lands on the flower, it changes the rate at which it beats its wings to just the right frequency. From this note to this one. Middle C. And it's these vibrations that are the key, unlocking the stamens, which open up at the top here and just shower the bee with pollen. Ah, look at that. Look at the amount of yellow pollen on there. Fantastic. Now watch the bee do the same, hitting the middle C note with the beat of its wings and unlocking the pollen. No other insect does this. It's incredible, isn't it? One single species of flower, one particular type of bee have evolved together to give this intimate partnership.
You catch that? They evolved together. They will not give God the credit. And the middle C, that's just amazing to me. Of all the different frequencies, oh, how about middle C? Yeah, it's incredible. But they're either blinded or they're willingly ignorant. They're just, anyhow. And then bumblebees aren't supposed to be able to fly with their physics, but they do anyway. And here's another clue. What do you think has a tail like a beaver, bill like a duck, fur like an otter, spurs like a rooster? Anybody? Webbed toes like water birds? What? Platypus, there you go. And when they discovered that, they thought it was a hoax. It's like, oh, but I mean, where did that come from? It came from everything. And I think God just made the platypus to make the evolutionists kind of scratch their head. It's like, yeah, how are we going to explain that one? And won't put it in the textbook. And then your eyes, incredibly, incredibly complex. And Bob Enyart, there's a famous atheist called P.Z. Meyer. And so he did the P.Z. Meyer challenge. He says, hey, PZ, you see it in the upper right-hand corner there? That muscle that goes through a sling? He said, how did that evolve? And PZ can't answer that. And your eyes have 250 photoreceptors, about 120 million rods and 6 million cones in each eye. That's incredible. And they come together and they meet in the middle. I mean, how'd you like to wire that thing? And yet God did. And just incredible. But evolutionize, I mean, the sight is just an amazing, amazing feat of sophistication. They take your photoreceptors are taking all these light images and your brain is processing it. And it's just incredible. And the evolutionists recognize that the eyes must have arisen independently at least 30 times. I mean, once is a miracle, and they expect it to happen 30 times. It's like bioluminescence, where the light of living things, where you got insects and centipedes and millipedes and a snail and earthworms and fungi and fish and squids, that they can all produce this light. Even like lightning bugs. No, you guys call them fireflies, right? In the south, they're lightning bugs. I mean, how did that happen? And it says, yeah, it must have risen at least 40 to 50 times. You know, they're really grasping at straws here, and even sonar. Dolphins is better than man, and it says that dolphins and bats both have complex echolocation systems. And they have built each by about 200 genes that are incredibly similar in both species. How about identical? You know, the DNA for the sonar for the dolphin and the bat are the same. I think God just had a toolbox. And he said, you know what, I need echolocation. He just takes it out of his toolbox, puts it in a bat, puts it in a dolphin. And evolutionists, they can't explain it. And they have identical genes. And that brings me to Daniel Kish. Okay, anybody ever heard of Daniel Kish? Okay, when he was 8 or 9 months old, he had cancer in his eye, so he lost one eye. And at 13 months, he lost the other eye. And he started clicking with his tongue. And his brain processes those sound waves, so it's human echolocation. It's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And I've been in this battle 10 years, and I've seen a lot of amazing things. And I couldn't believe I found this like last year. My wife found it. It's like, look at this. Like, wow, how come I don't know this? But I'll let you listen to him.
By 13 months of age, Daniel Kish had lost both eyes to a cancer called retinoblastoma. Instinctively, he soon began to make clicking sounds and started to echolocate just like bats do. Those clicks you hear are from his mouth, not the tapping of his cane.
As a kid, I was raised to think of myself as pretty unremarkable. My parents, their emphasis, their regard for me was you're a kid like any other kid.
He got his first bicycle at the age of 6.
I learned to click like a maniac, and I learned to ride around the neighborhood. And if I ran into a pole, my parents just didn't make a big deal out of it. Running into a pole is a drag, but never being allowed to run into a pole is a disaster.
Riding a bike blind has become a kind of stunt he does to raise awareness that the brain can adapt and that people can do far more than they realize.
Years ago, it was just unheard of. So if you'd all close your eyes for just a moment, okay? And you're going to learn a bit of flash sonar. Now, you have scientists studying it, you have instructors wanting to learn it, you have instructors wanting to teach it, you have blind people wanting to learn it. Being able to navigate comfortably in any environment, under any circumstances, nothing can be more fundamental to freedom than being able to do that.
Yeah, and the thing that pops out to me, and I contacted him, I said, would you like to be interviewed for Real Science Radio? And he said, sure. And I said, could we interview your parents? I'd like to hear their thought process about getting their blind kid a bicycle. And he emailed back and said that they're kind of camera shy or microphone shy, but they did interview him on Real Science Radio. And if you want to hear it, it's rsr.org/Batman. Okay, Batman. That's what they call it. Daniel Kish is Batman. And what I noticed about that, it's a drag running into a pole, but it's a disaster not being allowed to run into a pole. And I noticed how the parents didn't remove the obstacles for him. He learned how to overcome those obstacles himself. And I think we do a disservice to our kids by removing obstacles, because that's how you get confidence. You get confidence by overcoming. I overcame that, I can overcome this. But if everybody else takes away your obstacles when things go bad, you don't have the confidence to overcome them, and you expect somebody else to take care of it. And so I think that's what we need to, we're not doing a really good job of that with the next generation. I think they don't have the confidence to overcome. And when things don't go their way, they act like 2-year-olds. And we've seen that happen. And so that's just another thing. But Daniel Kish, it is, again, what else has God designed into us that we don't have any idea? God has blessed us with such incredible abilities, and to have human echolocation. And he talks about, they show I didn't show you all the clips, but they show him going through a park. Oh, it sounds like a tree there, a structure here, and it doesn't have a complete roof. It's just thatch or whatever. And it's like, oh, this looks like a basketball court, and it seems like the hoop is right. Boom, and he hits it. And he's got 360 degree. He can sense it. And our God's designed that into us. Nobody taught him. I just think God loved him so much. He showed him how to do it, and now he's taking that gift and sharing that gift. And incredible testimony for God. Oh yeah, I forgot to talk about this clue here. It's a shell in the closed position. Anybody ever seen a dead shell or dead clam? Are they open or closed? They're closed. They're open. Yeah. The only way you get a dead clam in a closed position is if it's buried rapidly. And they find these all over the world. So something buried clams rapidly all over the world, another strong indicator for Noah's flood. And again, we've got the high ground. We've got, the design is just screaming everywhere. And I'm at St. Cloud State. I even did it today. And I did it today. It's like, do you think this building got, because I was talking to a Christian and an atheist and an agnostic, you know, they're searching, which is good. I'm glad they're searching. And I said, do you think this building got put together by chance random processes? And they said, no. I said, yeah, it'd be kind of crazy to think that, right? And I said, but how much more crazy would it be to think that your body got put together by chance? Because your body's a lot more complicated than this building. Okay, so those are just some of the clues that God's given us. And again, we got that hydroplate theory. I encourage everybody to go into hydroplate.org and listen to this PhD guys. And if nothing else, that comment talk. Oh, I know what I forgot. I'm supposed to give away a book. How do we find Daniel Kish on RSR? rsr.org/ and raise your hand who can do it. What? There we go. That's right. rsr.org/Batman. Yes?
How do atheists respond to
Well, that one, she was an agnostic. Today we were talking to somebody, and she seemed like she was searching. She was inquisitive. She had some questions about why we were there and about the hydroplate. She goes, well, can you explain the hydroplate in 5 minutes? I gave it my best shot. But we must have talked for 15, maybe 20 minutes, and she kept on asking. I mean, some atheists are searching. You know, maybe they had a bad experience in their church. I mean, one time I had a table at St. Cloud State, and this guy, he was just, grew up in a Christian home, but had a bad experience with his dad, and he was really mad. And he was very belligerent with me, and he was just, and he was like, well, you're, whatever. And he was kind of yelling at me, and I just said, okay, get it off your chest. Just get it off your chest. And he went on and on. It's like, just get it off your chest. And then he left, and then he came back and he apologized. Yeah, some people, I could do a whole talk on what atheists say about this. Some are resistant. I mean, it was during Q&A one time at one of my talks. The guy asked, and I showed stuff like this, and he said, well, how do you think life began? I said, life made it, or God made it. God made us. And he goes, miracles, miracles, you believe in miracles? And he starts storming out of the room. And I said, everyone believes in miracles. I believe God created us, and you believe nothing exploded and turned into people. We both believe in miracles. What bothers him is he doesn't have a miracle maker. And they've been taught something for so long, and they believe it for so long, it's hard to change. And there's pride involved. Another time I did a talk called, Are You Being Brainwashed? That was in 2016. And I had mentioned that, if you're just a bunch of, if you got together by chance random processes, your brain's just a bag of random chemicals. How can you trust any of those thought processes? And he just yelled, perfect, and he stormed out of the room. He didn't like his belief system challenged, but we do need to challenge their belief system, because we don't want them to go to hell. And if they don't believe in Jesus, what chance is there that they're going to teach their kids about Jesus? And so if they're going to go to hell, they're going to have to push me out of the way. And they can go there if they want. I don't want them to. And the reason I can go to the campus is because I got a good pastor. He equipped us. And he did a message called When God's Desires Become Our Desires. Jesus looked at the multitude and he was moved with compassion because they were like sheep without a shepherd. And it just resonated with me at that time, St. Cloud State. They're getting led astray. Someone's got to reach them. And I didn't know what I was doing. I just had to try and reach them, and I learned trial and error. And I think your life will change when their need becomes more important than your desires. It doesn't matter what happens to me. They need the Savior. And that'll help you just plow through the swearing and spitting and sign throwing and poster ripping downing. They need the Savior. That's more important than what I feel. And when we get to that point, I think God can really use us when we put their need for a Savior above everything else.
Again, Brian, we really appreciate you coming and
Oh,
sharing.
my pleasure. Anytime.